Hey, Richard here. Welcome to my series of Logic Pro X tutorials. In this video, I'm going to be showing you how to use the compressor. So, up here, I've got a track loaded up with some MIDI information playing a simple little piano part. Now, as a visual guide, I'm going to bounce this track in place so that we can see what the uncompressed waveform looks like. There it is. Okay, I'm just going to put the loop on so we can have a listen. Okay, let's mute that guy. So here we go. Let's load up a compressor. There it is, stereo compressor. So I will admit this looks pretty intimidating. There's a lot of stuff going on here. You know, and each one of these buttons changes a lot of things going on. So I understand why you'd be completely freaked out about what this does and how on earth to use it. And, you know, I still do to this day go straight down to here to use presets. Well, firstly, because I love time saving. You know, and if it achieves the effect you want, so what? So here we go. It does help, of course, however, to understand how this works. So up the top here, these buttons are all the different types of compressors. Now, I'm not going to get into this, but I am going to click onto the classic VCA compressor here because it reduces the amount of knobs I see, which I think is always a good thing. So let's get to it. So on the compressor we have, on the bottom here, we have the input gain, threshold, ratio, makeup gain, limiter, auto gain, threshold, distortion, mix and output gain, and we have 2 meters here. Now we have up here we also have output and sidechain, but we'll leave it on output. Sidechain is another tutorial in itself. So first of all, input gain and output gain. This simply tells you the volume of the gain, well, how much gain is applied to the signal coming in to the compressor and how much gain is applied to the signal going out of the compressor. So if I press play, if I adjust the input gain, it adjusts how loud the signal is going in. If I adjust the output gain, it adjusts how loud the signal is coming out. Okay, so I'm going to leave input gain and output gain as is for now. And we're going to jump into this meter. Here we go. So we've got here lovely little meter, and what this is showing you is how much of the signal is being compressed and how much by. Well, so here we go. So it's being compressed a few decibels at this moment, right? So if I change the threshold, oh, hold on, that's going to annoy me hugely if I keep doing this. There we go, much better. Okay, back to it. Now, if I adjust the threshold to 0, what that means is any of the signal above 0 decibels is going to be compressed. So you can see here, pretty much nothing is happening. If I whack this all the way down to -50, that means that anything above 50 decibels, anything above that is going to be above -50 decibels is going to be compressed, and that's why a huge amount of the signal is going to be compressed. Awesome stuff. Okay, so with just the threshold knocked in there, we're going to bounce in place and see what the waveform looks like. And you can see there it's pretty flat. It is smashed to pieces. There we go. And what that has done is reduced all the dynamic peaks, which can be a good thing when you're mixing. You want to reduce all the dynamic peaks so that you're not getting any spikes in your metering. So let's take that down. The one thing though you already have noticed is when I whack the threshold down, my output gain has gone right down here. So to adjust that, I can of course move up the output gain if I wanted to, or I could use this, the makeup gain. So what that says is, yeah, that's not gain for your makeup on your face. This is if your signal has been dropped this much and you want it to stay the same volume as it was before, then you want to whack up that makeup gain a little bit more. So now you see the signal in and the signal out are pretty much the same. So if I bounce that in place now, you should see a flat signal because it's been super compressed, much more flat, but now it's a lot louder, a lot bigger. Awesome. So let's get into the rest of it. Ratio. Now, ratio works with the threshold in that it says how much of the signal, so anything above 20 decibels, is going to be compressed by a ratio of. So anything above 20 decibels is now going to be compressed to a ratio of 1 to 1. Hello. Anything above the threshold is going to be compressed by a ratio of 30 to 1. So 1 to 1, a ratio basically means it's a soft compression, nothing much is happening. A ratio of 30 to 1 is absolutely flattening the signal, so we're going to need a lot of makeup gain. So there we go, to bring it back to the same level. And I want to see what that looks like. Now, you see here, even in this little waveform, there's still peaks and troughs. Now, what I expect to see here with this export is an even flatter signal. There we go. The peaks and troughs have been greatly reduced. A really even signal. But it's a pretty harsh compression. A little too harsh, I think. So let's move on to. I'm going to leave auto gain for now, and I'm going to go on to a limiter. Now, a limiter, what that says is, rather than a compressor which works in that anything above a threshold of say minus 20 decibels is going to be compressed by a certain ratio, a limiter says nothing is going to get past this signal. So if I whack the makeup gain, you can see my output gain here is peaking at sort of -7, -6. So if I say anything above -7 is going to be limited. Nothing is getting past -10. See that? So I've got -10 selected on the threshold of the limiter, and nothing is getting past -10. I turn the limiter off. There we go. It goes back to -5, whatever it is, -4. Limiter on, back to -10. Now I quite like that little distortion of this clipping from the limiter, and that brings me on to this distortion here. If you want to warm up the sound, I don't think this sound needs a particular amount of warming up, if I'm honest with you. But if I wanted to warm up the sound, I could add some distortion. So I'm going to leave it clipping like it is now. Add some distortion. So I've taken this piano part. Some might be arguing that this actually doesn't sound that nice, but I think it sounds quite interesting. Let's compress it some more. So by raising the threshold of the compressor, it means that more of it is having to be limited, which means that I'm getting more clipping from the limiter, and I can add more makeup gain to make a rather interesting sound. But I'm going to return to my original slightly compressed sound. Actually, I think it'd be quite interesting if we saw what that waveform looks like. I think it's always handy to see because, you know, when you're mixing with MIDI, it's so easy to not really understand what's happening with the sounds. I mean, there you go. Nothing is getting past. Whoa. Nothing is getting past that -10 decibels. So you're just getting this flat sound with tiny little dips there. So that's a pretty harsh sound, and seeing it all compared the compression, I think is a fantastic visual aid. Always click on the wrong button, don't I? Well. So, let's return everything back to normal. Turn that off. Now, the other thing to bear in mind is this mix button. Say you said, actually, Rich, you know what? I love that harsh distortion. I think it sounds super, super sweet. Clipping. But I just want a hint of it. So only 6% of the signal is being slammed through this limiter. The other 94% is coming out as normal. Awesome. Right, okay, so let's return to... there we go. Let's return to the Platinum Digital. So now we've gained some more buttons here. The release, the attack, and the knee. Now what these three buttons refer to are the shape of the compression after the threshold. So anything above the threshold will be compressed to a ratio of 2:1. And you can soften how quickly the compressor acts with these three buttons. So for instance, let's load it up. Okay, let's turn the distortion off. There we go. Now, with this going, in fact, actually, it's probably a better example if I change the piano part. So let's duplicate that track, and I'm just going to, a few sort of percussive hits of a chord, that's all. Nice. There we go. Let's quantize that. Oh. Okay. So with this compressor acting on it now, you can see how the compressor is acting. It's compressing to a ratio of 8:1, so that's quite a harsh compression. It's dropping those peaks down. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at the knees. That means how soft or how angular the compression is. With this at 0, you see it's slamming down, coming back up. That means it's quite a harsh knee. With the knee at 1, it's more rounded. Now, there we go, that's the knee. I quite like having a nice soft knee, sort of around 0.6 to 0.8, with this type of sound. And release, that means if it's a quick release, it means that the compressor stops compressing after said amount of milliseconds. So here we go. After 5 milliseconds, the compressor will stop compressing. After 5,000 milliseconds, you see, there we go, the sound is not dropping back because the compressor is still working after 5,000 milliseconds. So if you want to increase the length, the tail of the sound, you use a long release. If you want it just to kind of like smack on percussive sounds, work on a percussive sound, then you give it a short release. Which brings me to attack. If you want it to act fast, have a really quick attack. That's usually for percussive sounds. It means the compressor works quickly. If you bring it up to like 200 milliseconds, it means the compressor takes a little bit of time to wake up. So that means that you can adjust whether the compression works on the start of the note or the end of the note. And how, with the attack and the knee, and with the release, it tells you how long afterwards it's going to be compressing. So I could have a quick attack long release, soft knee, that pretty much means that I'm really squashing the peaks of my sound and ramping up the volume of the transients. There we go. But to be honest with you, it's up to you now to have a little play around. Now remember, it does help a huge amount to have visual clues like we did here. If you're not sure what's happening with the compression, bounce in place and have a look at what's happening, because then that will help you when you're mixing as well. Because you might find that, oh wait, on bar 4 I'm peaking, and then you can go and zoom in on your bounce in place thing and go, oh yeah, well my track 5, it needs a little bit of compression on its, maybe the attack needs to be increased. So have a play around and explore what you can do with the compressor. You know, whether you want it to be a quick attack with a long release, a slow attack with a quick release, or whether you just want to have it slammed through it with a really low threshold, the limiter crushing it, and then add some distortion for a creative effect. Now, of course, you can play around with the other types of compressors here because they each have different sounds, and that's the wonderful thing about it. Some are better for drums, some are better for this, some are better for the other. So have a play around and see which one you like, because that's the fun of all this stuff, is just having a muck about and seeing what it sounds like. Alright, I hope that has helped you understand how to use the compressor in Logic. Go and have some fun with it, and don't forget to click subscribe. Thanks guys.